Hello there. So, you may have been hearing recently that the 3G shutdown 5G launch has been postponed. We need to talk because it's not what it sounds like. And the headlines are not really what's going on, and there's a lot of misinformation out there right now. So I've been doing a lot of digging because I got a lot of questions about this in the past few days. So we're going to go into all of that so that you folks are as prepared as you can be, so that you are not left out in the cold when all of this hits or removes from the airwaves, depending on how you look at it. Let's get started. So you may be hearing that the 3G shutdown 5G launch has been postponed because that's what they keep throwing in the headlines. And it's causing a lot of confusion, getting a lot of questions. So I wanted to address those for everybody because I don't want you guys to be caught unaware, right? I don't want you to end up not being able to use devices that you rely on. I've talked about this in greater detail in other streams, and I will put the link up here to that playlist so that you can go ahead and check that out in detail. But just as a quick summary for those folks who might be hitting this for the first time, what we're talking about is the fact that in order for 5G to really get released, and more importantly, the high-speed 5G, they need to open up some bandwidth, right? And just like what happened when 3G and 4G came, right? 2G went away. That's what's happening again. 3G is going away. The difference between now and when the 2G signal went away is that there are more devices, of course, right? Because time marches on. But more importantly, at least from my point of view, there are more important, like serious function devices out there that rely on 3G. So, for example, if you've ever seen those advertisements for, those devices that people can wear for personal security, right? Older folks, people with dementia, like if you're trying to keep track of, or people who just want to feel more secure when they're out and about. They want to be able to hit a button, and if they fall in the house, that's more okay in most cases because hopefully they have Wi-Fi. It's more about when you're out and about. If you press that button and you need help, it's an emergency, right? If you have one of those devices in your car that in an emergency, it's supposed to alert somebody in a crash or let you ask for help in a situation, a lot of those are built on 3G technology. And it's not so easy to replace or upgrade those kinds of things. And when 3G goes away, that means there's no signal. That means that there's nobody on the other end to help you. And that's just a small sample, right? We're talking about also medical devices and all that, plus our day-to-day stuff, right? Our phones, our tablets, our laptops, the MiFis, the personal Wi-Fi things. So there's a lot of things that people are relying on that they're not necessarily even aware are 3G devices. And when the time comes, it is going to come this year. That's what this is all about, right? Those headlines. When those switches get turned off, there's nothing. Now, if you are in a situation where it's a device that you're using just inside or where you've got access to Wi-Fi and it is also Wi-Fi capable, you're good. Wi-Fi is going to be fine. It's the folks who are absolutely relying on those 3G connections for their devices in order to get the information, the support that they need. That's where the issue is. So, we are going to let's. I'm just going to hit a couple of the headlines to explain why there's confusion, right? So, not going to call out the names of the content providers, right? But things like AT&T, it started off with this a couple of days ago. AT&T, Verizon, etc. refused request to delay launch, right? Which very quickly turned into this one. So-and-so, is hailing 3G delay from Verizon and AT&T. And my other favorite one was Verizon and AT&T cut a deal with the FAA will hit brakes on 5G C-band rollouts. So what are we talking about? What does this all mean? What does this have to do with 3G? So like I mentioned at the beginning, in order to get the 5G that many of us are waiting on, frankly, out there, they have to have bandwidth in the spectrum in order to get a signal. Because the towers can only handle so much, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's reasons for this. And in all fairness, this has been planned for years and been communicated for years, but not well. Okay? And not to the people that maybe needed to hear it. And again, like I said, there's a lot of people who are using devices that don't really understand that there's necessarily 3G in it. So that's why, like, those of us who are sort of in the more aware of this kind of thing need to reach out to the people in our life and make sure that they're covered. Now, I do have in the description some of the links, and like I said, you can go and check the playlist to get the others that will help you identify which do and don't. But these headlines make it sound like, oh, it's okay, we're good, because the whole thing is that in 2022, starting as early as like right now, the 3G was going to start getting shut down and will happen over the course of the year or so. Now, these headlines make it sound like, oh no, it's good, we don't have to worry about it, it's been postponed, it could be postponed forever. It's a 2-week postponement. 2 weeks. And it's 2-week postponement on the 5G rollout. Yeah, the 5G rollout, not the 3G shutdown. Now, these two are closely intertwined, right? Because one is happening because of the other. But there's no mention anywhere in any of these things when you really read all of the more dense documentation about what's been going on and the lawsuits and the conversation with the FCC and the FAA and all that kind of stuff. There is no mention at all that 3G is not still going to get shut down. So all of the things that we've been talking about the past couple of weeks, months, about you need to identify the devices that are 3G. You need to find out, if it's going to be enough for you to be able to use Wi-Fi. So, for example, Callie, is going to get her hands on a Kindle if she hasn't already that might have 3G, might have the 3G connection for getting books, but you can also use that on a Wi-Fi connection. So it's still completely, valid. But if you're using, or anybody who's using medical devices that sends a signal and gets information back, that might be a 3G device you need to check, and they do not make that easy. So you're going to have to do some digging. We're talking, your cars, things, like I mentioned, being able to call for help, but also, cars are more and more becoming computers also. And so if you're using a app on your phone to maybe, start your car, before, and get it warmed up, that may not work anymore. But you're going to have to check to find out, because they're not being super proactive about letting you know. And what your options are limited depending on what it is that you're talking about. So what they're talking about in these headlines, what is actually going on here, is just that the FAA, late to the game, I don't know. That's been a little clear. The timelines are not being discussed too clearly here, but they evidently have concerns at the airports about 3G affecting altimeters. It's a word I trip over every time. That planes, helicopters, so on and so forth use. Now, again, the 3G shutdown, the 5G rollout is not news. This was not sprung on them last week. So I'm a little fuzzy on why they were not, again, more proactive about doing the kind of testing on it. Especially since, now let me get this right, the FTC, no, that's not right. One of the agencies is quite secure that it's going to be fine. Let me get these right, because these acronyms, you know how it goes. The FCC, right? Okay, so the FCC and all of the companies that are trying to roll out 5G are like, yeah, it's going to be fine. Did they really test it? Did they not? Well, I'm not finding that in an answer. The FTA, the airlines, those folks are saying, well, we rely on this, and it may impact these devices on airplanes and helicopters and so on and so forth, and so we need you to not do this. Now, understand that they were going to make an announcement. Today is Thursday when I'm recording this. There was going to be a big rollout on Tuesday. There were all kinds of big announcements planned and everything. That got shut down. Because after saying, no, we're not going to postpone it, some deal was made last minute, and so they got a 2-week extension. I don't understand what they can do in 2 weeks that they couldn't have done in the past 2 years, but whatever. The other thing that's happening as far as the 5G part of this is evidently they are going to roll it out. So, and the 5G thing now is going to be more complicated, like it wasn't complicated enough. So it turns out there's going to be levels of 5G. So there's going to be 5G that's going to take over the bandwidth that 3G was using. Okay, that's going to be your standard 5G. However, it turns out there's going to be a high-speed 5G, which is on the C band, which is what most of the phone carriers bought into when the government sold extra space on the airwaves. Yeah, I know, it's confusing. So when you go and you're buying your 5G service and your 5G devices, you're going to have to, again, do a lot of research and ask a lot of questions to find out exactly what level of 5G the device can handle and your service is giving you to make sure that they're lined up. One of the indicators, I'm sure, for the faster 5G, right, the high speed, will be that it's going to cost more. Big surprise. But you don't want to be paying for that faster 5G service and have a device that only handles standard. Right? You want to get what you're paying for. So make sure that you're asking the right questions and you're pushing hard to make sure that the answer is right and, trust but verify. That's all you can do is ask the question, get the answer, and then go ask it again someplace else and compare the answers, because people will give you answers to sell things, right? We all know this. So, yeah. Kelly's like, this is bizarre. Yes, it is. Oh, and I forgot to put on my captions. I'm sorry. I'm going to do something about that. But yes, it is bizarre, and this is the thing, right? Yeah, I mean, the whole 5G was already complicated, and now it's, well, yeah, because the first 5G that went out wasn't really 5G, but they were selling it that way, right? That was one level of the problem. Then there's true 5G, okay, fine, and there's issues around that as far as distance and all that kind of stuff. Yes, it's faster, yes, it's better, but it's also not, it doesn't reach as far, so it's great, but, and of course, they never want to talk about the but. But now this high-speed 5G adds a whole nother layer to it. And it does clear up something, because I'm like, I knew that there had been the sale of the extra C-band space, which is why I was a little surprised that they were bothering to shut down the 3G. But now I understand, because they're going to have your basic 5G, and now they're going to have this advanced 5G. So that's going to be the whole thing. Now, as far as, being on airplanes and all that, I don't want anybody to panic, but my point here is not to get you upset, right? They're not going to take any unnecessary risks, right? They are going to be doing this testing. And even if they do roll it out in 2 weeks, okay, because part of the deal from the U.S. government was, if the phone carriers would agree to postpone the release of 5G, the rollout, for 2 weeks, then they would not ask or push for further what am I looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? Further delays, right? So they were, if AT&T, Verizon, all the players in the 5G universe agreed to a 2-week postponement, the government was not going to ask for more. That said, there have been lawsuits going on about this for a while with aviation and some other things, and those will continue to go on. But my point here is, first of all, that if you have a 3G device, this does not buy you any time, okay? So as of now and going forward, this is January in 2022, 3G is being shut down in stages. They're not being super communicative about who, what, and when. But the reality is, one day you're going to go and you're going to be out and about with your 3G device, and you're going to try to connect to a mobile signal, and it's not going to connect, and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. So you do want to reach out. You want to find out what your options are. First you got to identify the devices that you need to worry about. Then you need to reach out and find out what your options are, and then you need to take action on those kinds of things, because you do not want to be caught without. Also understand that despite the common knowledge that, I can keep it as a backup phone, or whatever, and use it for emergencies to call 911. That's not true. When they talk about shutting down that 2G or 3G, that means there's nothing to connect to. So while, yes, it is, I don't know if it's a rule or a law, at least here in the US, that you're supposed to be able to make emergency phone calls even from a phone that you're not paying for service on, there is a limit, a practical limit to that, in that if there is nothing for that phone to connect to, there is nothing for that phone to connect to, so that rest of it doesn't matter. So these phones are not even going to work as backups, in an emergency type things. Now, that doesn't mean that please don't just throw them away. There are options, and we did cover that in the other shows, but let's just understand what we're talking about, right? So 3G is still going away, okay? This postponement is not going to impact that. The postponement is 2 weeks before the carriers can roll out 5G. And despite all the lawsuits and everything else that's going on, that's going to happen. There will be, as far as the airports go, to get back to that, why you don't have to worry, they're going to set up zones where 5G is not going to be in effect around airports mainly. I'm sure military and all that kind of stuff too. They're not going to put that in the paper. So you don't have to worry about getting on a plane or the helicopter other than, you know, any normal phobias that you might have about it. But they are, you know, again, I think that they should have tested this beforehand, but that's now moot. So, you know, they are definitely going to, you know, sort of like a geofence kind of a thing where they'll just make sure that the signals are not going into those areas until they resolve all this and they do all the testing and, you know, who knows, money changes hands, whatever is going to go on. But you're going to start to see, if you haven't already, you know, some scare tactics from that side of the fence. I would not panic too much about that because they're just using that to manipulate and to get some clout so that they can push a little harder to get whatever compensation they're looking for as they go through this process. So that's what I have for you. I just wanted to make sure that that was out there and that was clear. Let me just take a quick look here. So yeah, I want to make sure I got all the basic notes to you. So yeah, so it's going to be, you know, probably around the 19th or so that you'll really start to see these things happening. 5G will be kept away from the runways for a while until they get everything taken care of, and they talk and they work with the altimeter manufacturers and make sure that that's all going to work. So that's all good. So don't worry about flying, but do worry about any devices that you rely on that are using anything other than Wi-Fi or a wired connection to the internet, because even something that you bought fairly recently, okay, might still be a 3G device. Not so much with like newer phones, like, you know, if you bought a phone, you know, that's older, then the odds are pretty good that it might be impacted. Newer phones are fine. It's more about these other devices, right? Or, you know, like security systems or tracking systems, personal security, healthcare devices. Again, I'm not saying all of them, but those are the ones that are more likely to be relying on a 3G connection. They're probably not making waves about that, and so that's the kind of thing that you don't want to find out the hard way, right? You don't want to be relying on a medical device or a security device and then find out that there's nobody on the other end to help you because it's not connected to anything. So go do this now. Don't postpone it. I know we just got through the holidays and everybody's kind of like, I can't deal yet. But you do want to be on top of this because it's going to happen, and it's going to happen very, very soon. It may be happening as I'm talking here. So there we go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I do hope that you are well and starting off your new year well. If you have any questions, comments, if you need help with anything, you can always reach out here, youratechcoach.net. All I ask is that if you need a fast answer, give me a way to get back in touch with you, generally an email address, so that I can do that. Otherwise, all I can do is, like I just did here, and cover it on the show because, boy, have I been getting a lot of questions. And I am here every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so I do hope that you will come back and visit. If you can't join live, then please, you know, go ahead, watch the replays. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments. I do go through on the platforms and follow up on those questions. All right? Oh, you're quite welcome, Callie. You know, this is what I do. This is I try to stay on top of this kind of stuff, so you don't have to. But I did want to get the word out there and make sure that, you know, people were getting information beyond the headlines, because the headlines are extremely misleading, and we can't have that because it's too serious. Like, this is not, you know, an Xbox release kind of thing. Not that that's not important, folks. I understand the importance of Xbox in the universe, but this kind of stuff, it could have much bigger implications, so I want to make sure everybody's up to date. All right, have a good one, folks. We will be talking soon, and like I said, go ahead, throw it in the comments if you have any questions or concerns or information you want to share. Take it easy. Bye.